everyone. Welcome back to Whodunit. Today, once again, we're diving into the heartbreaking story of a beautiful young college student from Plainfield, Illinois. So let's uncover this story together. Alicia Bramfield was 21 years old, standing at the threshold of the brightest days of her life. She was just months away from finishing her degree in criminology at Western Illinois University. Back home in Illinois, she had carefully prepared a small room for her unborn daughter, Ava Lucille. Tiny clothes folded neatly, bottles lined up a crib waiting by the window. A young mother-to-be single, but determined, her eyes lit with faith in a future she was eager to embrace. But within that picture of hope, a crack had already begun to spread. Alicia worked under a man, 15 years older, Brian Cooper, a supervisor who masked his obsession and need for control behind the role of a helpful manager. What seemed like guidance soon became a shadow pressing in on every corner of her life. On the morning of August 18th, 2012, Alicia left Plainfield, Illinois, with Cooper for a short trip to Door County, Wisconsin. She believed she would be back with her family the very next day, ready to continue her plans for school, for work, and for motherhood. But by dawn on August 19th, her body would be discovered in a quiet hotel room by the water. A young woman carrying a child, silenced forever. What happened in those final hours? How did a man who once appeared to be just a boss transform into a killer? And why did the justice system, at least at first, seem powerless in the face of such obvious evil? The story you're about to hear is not only about murder. It is a mirror reflecting the darker side of power, the silence of the institutions, and the unending grief of a family robbed of its light. Alicia Bramfield was born on August 28, 1990, in Joliet, Illinois. She was one of 5 children in the Bramfield family, a working-class household built on love and resilience. From an early age, Alicia showed an independent spirit. Whenever she faced trouble, she preferred to solve it herself rather than burden her parents. That self-reliance became her defining trait, shaping her into a strong young woman who knew how to stand firm against challenges. As she grew older, Alicia enrolled at Western Illinois University, where she pursued criminology. This choice wasn't random. She often expressed a fascination with understanding human darkness, with asking why people commit crimes and how justice might truly be served. She dreamed of working in forensic psychology, using her mind and compassion to confront society's hidden truths. Outside of school, Alicia worked at the Home Depot Garden Center. She started as a teenager, spending nearly 6 years there, arranging flowers, designing displays, and helping customers. For Alicia, the job wasn't just a paycheck. She loved flowers, the way a bouquet could brighten a stranger's day, the way she could create beauty with her hands. Colleagues recalled how she always smiled while working with arrangements, as though she was weaving a little hope into every stem and petal. Life, however, was not without hardship. During college, Alicia entered a relationship. When she became pregnant, her partner refused responsibility and walked away. The heartbreak could have crushed her, but Alicia chose a different path. She decided to raise the child on her own. She picked the name Ava Lucille for her unborn daughter, a name soft, luminous, and filled with promise. By the summer of 2012, Alicia was about 6.5 months pregnant. She juggled final exams with shopping trips for baby supplies, bottles, diapers, tiny outfits. In her bedroom, she painted walls, set up a crib, and hung light curtains. Each detail reflected a mother's love, poured into preparations for a life she had yet to hold. She even mapped out a plan: take maternity leave for 2 months, then return part-time to Home Depot. And once her degree was completed, transition into a career in her chosen field. Friends and family saw in her a young woman glowing with energy and optimism. Yes, she knew being a single mother would be difficult, financial strain, emotional weight, but Alicia radiated determination. Many described her gaze as one that always looked forward, as though tomorrow held only light. Yet while she was building dreams of motherhood, another story was unfolding in the shadows. Brian Cooper, a 36-year-old regional manager at Home Depot, had been part of Alicia's work life for years. At first, he seemed helpful, arranging her schedule around classes. But slowly, his behavior shifted. He crossed lines, blurring professional boundaries with personal advance, and began exerting a disturbing kind of control. For Alicia, the job was essential. As a soon-to-be single mother, every dollar mattered. Stability mattered. And so she chose patience. She kept interactions polite, avoided confrontation, and told herself she only needed to endure a little longer until maternity leave. But Cooper wasn't a man who respected silence. Her attempts to minimize conflict only fueled his obsession. At 21, Alicia should have been living through her most beautiful chapter, stepping into adulthood, preparing to welcome her daughter, and reaching toward her career dreams. Instead, her future collided with the harshest reality, a reality where the person who should have been merely a boss transformed into a looming threat, a man whose obsession would soon shatter everything. At first, Brian Cooper's behavior could be mistaken for excessive friendliness. He adjusted Alicia's shifts occasionally, offered her help in the warehouse, and made comments that might have seemed like compliments. But over time, the pattern grew darker. Cooper monitored her closely, watching which male co-workers she spoke with, and if he saw her chatting, he sometimes cut her lunch break short, claiming it interfered with work. In secluded corners like the warehouse, he tried to kiss her without consent. Alicia recognized that this was no longer workplace courtesy. She repeatedly rejected his advances, making it clear that theirs was a professional relationship only. But Cooper was the type who couldn't accept no. Each rejection fueled his anger. Soon, his frustrations became public. He began criticizing Alicia in front of customers, nitpicking the way she arranged flowers, humiliating her over trivial details. On more than one occasion, he erupted in rage, throwing items onto the floor. Determined to protect herself, Alicia took careful steps. She documented each incident, dates, times, specific threats, and inappropriate behavior. With this record, she filed a formal complaint with Home Depot management. Her account was thorough, difficult to dismiss. Harassment, verbal abuse, intimidation, and unwanted physical advances. Yet the company's response was shockingly weak. Rather than discipline, Cooper suspend him or transfer him. They merely required him to enroll in an anger management class, with no follow-up to confirm completion. No protection for Alicia, no consequences for him. It was a hollow gesture signaling that management preferred to look the other way. And Alicia wasn't alone. Investigators would later learn that several female employees had endured similar treatment under Cooper. The company knew this, but systemic inaction emboldened him. For Cooper, the lack of accountability became a kind of shield. He grew convinced he was untouchable, immune to consequences. Meanwhile, Alicia found herself trapped in an agonizing dilemma. Quitting meant losing her income, and as a soon-to-be single mother, that wasn't an option. She confided in her family, "I need to keep this job." But those words, meant as determination, also carried a silent weight. Her survival and her daughters depended on enduring this toxic environment. Day after day, the pressure mounted. Cooper manipulated her work schedule, often interfering with her prenatal medical appointments. Alicia had to postpone or cancel crucial checkups, sacrificing her health for stability. Occasionally, she opened up to her mother Sherry about the stress. But most of the time she chose silence. She believed if she could just endure 2 more months until maternity leave, she and Ava would be safe. But reality was harsher. Each day of endurance was another day. Cooper's obsession escalated. His harassment was no longer about inappropriate words, it was about power control and possession. To him, Alicia wasn't a colleague or a young mother-to-be. She was an object he believed he had a right to, and the company's indifference only fed the delusion. No one, least of all Alicia, realized that those unanswered complaints were more than cries for help. They were warnings of a looming tragedy. Ignored, dismissed, left to rot in a file cabinet, they became the silent prelude to a crime that would soon end 2 lives. By August of 2012, Alicia Bramfield was in her final trimester of pregnancy. She was exhausted, but holding on, balancing her studies and work while preparing for the arrival of her daughter. That was when Brian Cooper, the 36-year-old manager who had harassed her for years, forced yet another ultimatum. He invited Alicia to his sister's wedding in Door County, Wisconsin, about a 6-hour drive from Plainfield, Illinois. Alicia declined at first, citing her health and personal commitments. But Cooper turned the invitation into a threat. If she refused, he warned he would cut her hours or fire her. For Alicia, refusing wasn't simple. She needed the job. Backed into a corner, she agreed, but only on the condition that Cooper reserve a separate hotel room. On the morning of August 18, 2012, the two left Illinois and drove north to the Sand Bay Beach Resort in Door County. When they arrived, Alicia was stunned. Cooper had booked only one room with a double bed. He brushed it off as a mix-up, but she immediately texted her mother, Sherry, saying she felt deceived and unwelcome. Cooper pleaded with her to stay, promising it would be just one night, that his family would be present, and there was nothing to fear. Reluctantly, Alicia chose not to cause a scene on the wedding day. The wedding itself passed without incident. Cooper walked his sister down the aisle, while Alicia kept her distance, polite but uneasy. That evening during the reception, Cooper drank heavily. Alicia texted her mother again, assuring her she would return home the next day. Just one more night. Tomorrow I'll be back. Those words carried both resignation and hope. But in the early hours of August 19th, inside the hotel room, the fragile balance collapsed. Cooper, intoxicated and emboldened, pressed Alicia once more to enter a romantic relationship. Alicia was resolute. She told him plainly that after everything he had done, not only could there be no romance, there could be no friendship either. For Cooper, those words shattered the fantasy he had nurtured for years. Rage overtook him. He lunged at Alicia and wrapped his hands around her throat. She struggled desperately, scratching, gasping, fighting for breath. Bruises and claw marks later testified to her attempt to resist his, but his grip only tightened. Forensic experts later determined the strangulation lasted about 5 minutes. 5 minutes, long enough to stop, long enough to reconsider. But he did not. Alicia and the unborn child she carried were gone. And then his depravity deepened. After she lay lifeless, Cooper stripped her clothing. He later admitted he had long fantasized about seeing her this way. In a twisted act of possession, he sexually assaulted her body. Only after did the reality of what he had done sink in. Panic set in. He tried half-heartedly to take his own life. He picked up a knife but hesitated. He filled a bathtub, but could not go through with it. He stumbled to the beach intending to drown himself, but again faltered. Soaked and trembling, he finally walked to a nearby gas station, borrowed a phone, and called 911. In a broken voice, he confessed, "I killed my coworker." When investigators entered the hotel room at Sand Bay Beach Resort, they found a chilling scene. Alicia Bramfield lay lifeless on the floor, her body marked with bruises and scratches that spoke of a desperate struggle. Around the room, overturned items showed how fiercely she had fought to survive. The autopsy confirmed what was already obvious. She died from strangulation, a violent act that lasted several minutes. And with her death, her unborn daughter, Ava Lucille, also lost her life. Meanwhile, Brian Cooper sat in an interrogation room. He confessed in detail how Alicia's rejection enraged him, how he wrapped his hands around her throat, and what he did afterward to her body. His words were recorded, chilling in their clarity. But the evidence did not stop there. Detectives uncovered hidden cameras that Cooper had installed both in his own home and even in the hotel bathroom, where he secretly recorded Alicia. His obsession was long-standing, calculated, and deeply disturbing. It seemed the case was airtight. Yet when Cooper went to trial in 2013, his defense attorneys built their case around a single argument: intoxication. They claimed he had been so drunk at his sister's wedding and afterward that he could not fully comprehend his actions. Expert witnesses were brought in to describe how alcohol impairs judgment. Incredibly, 2 jurors accepted this reasoning. The result: a hung jury. The judge declared a mistrial. For Alicia's family, this was unbearable. Her mother, Sherry, sat through every hearing listening to a man who admitted to killing her daughter escape justice because of a legal loophole. To her, it was not only a personal betrayal, but a systemic failure. How could voluntary drunkenness be used as an excuse for murder? Sherry refused to stay silent. She launched a campaign to change the law. She gathered signatures through petitions, wrote letters to state and federal officials, and spoke publicly about Alicia's story. Her mission was clear: to ensure no other family would endure the same injustice. Her persistence paid off. In the spring of 2014, Wisconsin passed a groundbreaking law. Voluntary intoxication could no longer be used as a criminal defense. The law was directly inspired by Alicia's case. Over time, more than 31 states followed suit, adopting similar reforms. That same year, Cooper faced a second trial. This time, prosecutors were ready. They emphasized that Cooper had demonstrated full awareness of his actions. He described the murder in detail. He attempted to cover the body. He even tried to kill himself before calling 911. These were not the actions of a man incapable of understanding consequences. Jurors were shown digital evidence, including the hidden recordings, and heard testimony from Cooper's co-workers who described years of harassment. Cooper's manipulation of Alicia's schedule, his public humiliation of her, and his obsessive stalking painted a picture of control and not drunken confusion. In July of 2014, the verdict was delivered. Brian Cooper was found guilty and sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, 1 for Alicia and 1 for her unborn child, Ava. The ruling closed a legal chapter, but for Sherry and her family, the grief remained unhealed. Justice had finally been served, but it could never restore what was lost. What it did achieve, however, was something larger: a shift in the law, born from tragedy, ensuring that future offenders could not hide behind alcohol as a shield. When the judge pronounced 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, the courtroom exhaled in relief. For prosecutors and investigators, it was a victory for justice. But for Alicia's family, especially her mother Sherry, it was a hollow victory. No sentence could bring Alicia back. No law could breathe life into Ava Lucille, the granddaughter she would never hold. In later interviews, Sherry voiced the truth that lingered like an open wound. He may have been sentenced, but for us, the pain will never end. That statement echoed far beyond her family. It was a reminder that justice, while necessary, cannot erase grief. Courts can punish the guilty, but they cannot heal the living. And yet in her grief, Sherry found the strength to act not only for Alicia, but for countless other women whose cries for help had been ignored. The story of Alicia is not just one of violence. It is a reflection of something darker, that evil is not only in the hands of the murderer, but also in the silence of the institutions that fail to intervene. If Home Depot had acted decisively when Alicia filed her complaints, perhaps her life and Ava's could have been spared. Today, Alicia's law stands as a painful but powerful legacy. It ensures that voluntary intoxication will never again be used as an excuse to escape responsibility. It reminds us that justice cannot be blurred by alcohol or undermined by systemic negligence. For us, those who hear Alicia's story, what lingers is not only sorrow, but a question: what role can we play in workplaces and families and society to make sure that no plea for help is ever ignored again? If you wish to continue exploring true stories like this, tales of loss, justice, and lessons carved from tragedy, stay with this channel, because sometimes remembering is the only way we can honor the voices of those who are gone and transform memory into strength for change. Samantha Keithley, 33 years old, seemed to have it all: a beautiful new home in Land O'Lakes, Florida, a rising career at the Hard Rock Casino, a promising start in real estate, and 4 children who were her entire world. From a childhood marked by the loss of her mother, Samantha grew into a strong woman, someone who cared for others with the kind of determination that earned her the title of a real-life Wonder Woman. But on the night of September 23rd, 2018, inside the very 2-story house that symbolized the American dream, peace was shattered. 6 hours of relentless tension, arguments, and the unraveling of a husband himself, a deputy sheriff, turned a family home into a crime scene. Within minutes, Samantha's life ended on the living room sofa, while her 4 children remained inside the house, forced to witness a nightmare that would scar them forever. And the man who was supposed to be her shield, a law enforcement officer sworn to protect justice, became the one who pulled the trigger. How could a seemingly perfect family collapse into tragedy overnight? And why would a man, entrusted with a badge and a gun, symbols of protection, become the destroyer within his own home? To understand the weight of this tragedy, we must begin with the woman at its center, Samantha Keithley, someone who seemed born to love and protect others. Born on December 29, 1984 in Fayetteville, North Carolina, Samantha's life was scarred early by the devastating loss of her mother to cancer when she was only 16 years old. At an age when most teenagers still needed protection, Samantha became the protector. Her younger brother, Taylor Sterling, later recalled, "We lost our mom too young, and it brought us closer. She became almost like a mother figure to me." This painful experience shaped Samantha into someone resilient, instinctively nurturing, and deeply empathetic. When the family moved to Brandon, Florida, she attended Bloomingdale High School, where she met Kristen Kellen, the best friend who would remain by her side through every chapter of life. Even in her teenage years, Samantha stood out, full of life, magnetic, and able to make everyone around her feel seen and valued. As an adult, she chose a demanding path. Samantha worked for more than a decade at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Tampa, climbing to the role of assistant manager. Her dedication and energy made her respected among colleagues, yet she refused to stop there. She studied nursing and later leapt into real estate with Keller Williams Realty in Lakeland. Within only a few months, she was already showing remarkable potential. Her co-workers admired her ability to balance so much: a casino career, real estate clients, and 4 children. To them, she was truly Wonder Woman, the woman who somehow made chaos look effortless. Family life was at the core of Samantha's world. In 2012, she married Kirk Keithley, blending a family of 4 children: Mark, her teenage son, Peyton, Kirk's son, and 2 daughters they had together, Olivia and Ellen. In February 2018, the couple bought their dream home on Durazzo Way in the Beatsley subdivision of Lando Lakes, a cream-colored 2-story house worth $322,000. The neighborhood was safe, family-friendly, and close to excellent schools. From the outside, it looked like the perfect picture of the American dream. Kirk, with nearly 2 decades in law enforcement, appeared to be a steady, dependable partner. To the community, they were a model family: the deputy sheriff, his ambitious wife, and 4 children, building a future together. But behind the polished surface, subtle cracks were beginning to form. At family gatherings, Kirk often seemed distant, uninterested in connecting with relatives. Neighbors noticed that Samantha, normally warm and cheerful, became reserved and quiet whenever Kirk was nearby. These small, fleeting details revealed something darker: the signs of a controlling relationship. Here lies the cruel irony. Samantha, the woman who had once encouraged her friends to leave abusive partners, found herself living under the invisible grip of control. The more she succeeded, the more Kirk seemed unsettled, as if her independence threatened his authority. Outwardly, they embodied stability. Inwardly, the tension was a silent bomb ticking away in the shadows, waiting for one fatal night to explode. If Samantha was the radiant light of the family, then Kirk Keithley was the cold shadow looming over her life. Born in 1979, Kirk began his career with the Petersburg Police Department in 2003, before joining the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in 2009. On paper, it looked like a steady career spanning nearly 2 decades. But buried within his record were warning, subtle, troubling signs that painted a different picture. In 2008, during his time in St. Petersburg, a performance evaluation described him as having an austere demeanor. In law enforcement, that phrase is more than formality. It suggests a man who is cold, detached, lacking in empathy, the very qualities that make community policing difficult. The report even recommended interpersonal skills training. Yet the warning was noted and then forgotten. Kirk moved forward in his career without further scrutiny. Over the years, he accumulated minor reprimands, a counseling letter for a preventable traffic accident in 2011, a written reprimand in 2016 for misuse of communication systems. Nothing catastrophic, but when pieced together, they revealed a pattern: a man who was careless, difficult, and unable to connect. In private life, he was no different. Neighbors described him as distant, hard to approach. Mike Griffith, who lived across the street for 5 years, tried repeatedly to befriend him, even introducing him to another deputy from Georgia, hoping their shared profession might spark a bond. Instead, Kirk turned his back. And whenever Kirk was around, Samantha seemed to shrink. Normally friendly and outgoing, she became reserved, offering only a quick hello before retreating. It was a chilling detail, the behavior of someone quietly controlled by their partner's presence. Within Samantha's family, Kirk was viewed as cold, sometimes arrogant. He avoided conversation with in-laws, leaving the impression that he was unwilling to truly integrate. From a criminal psychology perspective, this was classic: an abuser maintaining control through emotional distance, isolating the victim from support networks. No shouting matches in public, no visible bruises, just the slow tightening of an invisible grip. And Kirk had another advantage. He was a law enforcement officer. He knew the system, knew how domestic violence cases were handled, and knew how to avoid leaving evidence. For years, no 911 calls were ever made from their home. There were no official records of violence. But silence does not mean safety. It often means fear. On the night of September 23, 2018, every dangerous element converged. Kirk had been drinking heavily. His blood alcohol level later tested at 0.156, nearly twice the legal limit in Florida. In his system, investigators also found oxycodone, a powerful painkiller. The combination of alcohol and opioids is volatile. It destroys rational judgment, heightens aggression, and lowers inhibitions. Kirk was a ticking time bomb. So was this just a man undone by stress, liquor, and pills? Or was it something deeper? Samantha's growing independence, her rising career in real estate may have threatened his fragile sense of control. For a man whose power depended on dominance, her success wasn't a joy. It was a challenge. That night, Kirk crossed a line from husband to executioner. And in the home that once symbolized safety, he revealed his true face, not the deputy sworn to protect, but the killer who destroyed everything he was supposed to guard. The cruelest part of all, 4 innocent children were inside, forced to witness the nightmare that shattered their family forever. September 23, 2018. A Sunday evening that began like any other, inside the cream-colored 2-story home in the Beeksley subdivision of Lando Lakes. But as night fell, peace dissolved into chaos. Samantha wasn't feeling well. She asked her husband, Deputy Sheriff Kirk Keithley, for something simple to let her rest. Instead of compassion, she received 6 relentless hours of harassment. Fueled by alcohol and oxycodone, Kirk grew more agitated. He pushed, argued, and berated until the air inside the house felt suffocating. Every attempt Samantha made to retreat only escalated his rage. 6 hours of tension, 6 hours of emotional captivity. At one point, Samantha did what many survivors of domestic abuse attempt. She left. She drove to a hotel, a desperate act of self-preservation. Yet like so many victims, she returned. Perhaps for her children, who were sleeping upstairs. Perhaps because she believed Kirk had finally calmed down. Whatever her reason, it was a decision that sealed her fate. At 11:50 p.m., Samantha sent her final desperate texts to her best friend, Kristen Kellen. Kirk has lost his mind, Kristen. He's been harassing me for the last 6 hours. I asked him to leave me alone because I'm sick. I just threw my wedding ring outside. Throwing away her wedding ring was more than symbolic. It was defiance, the ultimate rejection. For a man obsessed with control, it was a spark to gasoline. Just after midnight, September 24th, Samantha sat on the downstairs sofa, exhausted and vulnerable. Perhaps she thought the storm had passed. Instead, Kirk approached and fired. The gunshot shattered the night. Upstairs, 4 children woke to terror. 14-year-old Mark, Samantha's eldest, ran downstairs. What he saw would haunt him forever, his mother, lifeless, blood pooling around her. In that unimaginable moment, Mark did not freeze. He crawled beneath the garage door, escaped the house, and dialed 911. Through tears, his words were clear. My mom's been shot. Oh my God, my stepdad just shot my mom in the head. Even as the dispatcher pressed for details, Mark's voice trembled between shock and composure. At one point, the line went dead. For minutes, no one knew if the children were alive or if Kirk was still a threat. Then Mark called back. This time a friend's father took the phone, assuring the dispatcher the children were safe, though traumatized. Meanwhile, upstairs, Kirk ended the night by turning the gun on himself. A single self-inflicted shot. When Pasco County deputies arrived, they entered a scene burned into memory. Samantha dead on the sofa, Kirk dead upstairs, 4 children alive but scarred. Sheriff Chris Nacco later stated, "The moment someone goes from protecting people to harming people, he loses the right to ever call himself a law enforcement officer." That night, the so-called American Dream home became a crime scene drenched in grief. A mother silenced, a husband exposed as a killer, and 4 children forever changed, carrying the weight of what they saw and heard. In the dark hours of September 24th, 2018, Samantha's death did not only shatter her family, it rippled across the entire Tampa Bay community. Within days, friends, colleagues, and even strangers rallied together, raising nearly $80,000 to support her 4 children, left without their mother. Grief transformed into solidarity, but the absence she left behind was impossible to fill. Her funeral was held on October 2nd, 2018, at Bell Shoals Baptist Church in Brandon. Hundreds filled the sanctuary, carrying flowers and tears in equal measure. The service became a testimony to a life both short and luminous. Her uncle, Ted Friley, delivered the words that defined her memory. "When you tell this story, please don't boil her life down to the last few minutes. Remember the 18 million other minutes. 33 years of love, sacrifice, and joy." His plea was simple. Let Samantha be remembered for the light she carried, not the violence that took her. For her closest friends, the pain was sharper. Kristen Kellen, who had received Samantha's desperate text at 11:50 that night, confessed she didn't open it until hours later. She now lives with the tormenting question, if I had seen it sooner, could I have saved her? That guilt, raw and unrelenting, became its own form of punishment. But Samantha's story also forced society to confront a chilling truth: domestic violence within law enforcement families often hides in plain sight. Studies show police officers are statistically more likely to commit domestic abuse than the general population. And when the abuser wears a badge, the victim is even less likely to call for help. Fear of retaliation, fear of colleagues covering for one another, fear that no one will believe them. All of it conspires to keep the silence. Samantha, the woman who once urged friends to leave abusive relationships, was herself trapped in one she could not escape. Only 3 months later, Florida witnessed another horror. On December 19th, 2018, Deputy Terry Strawn, an officer with an impeccable record, killed his wife, his daughter, and his granddaughter before turning the gun on himself. He announced each shot over the police radio. 2 men, 2 different stories, one acting in drunken rage, the other in chilling calculation. Yet both were deputies. Both destroyed their families. The twin tragedies left the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office no choice but to act. Sweeping reforms followed: mandatory suicide prevention, training, a full-time psychologist on staff, emotional support dogs, chaplain programs, and a behavioral resources unit. The goal was to break the culture of silence, to fight the stigma surrounding mental health in law enforcement. For the first time, the department publicly acknowledged the darkness that can fester behind the badge. Still, the question lingered: what is justice in a case like this? No trials, no sentencing, only 2 dead bodies and 4 traumatized children. Reform can save future lives, but it cannot erase the bloodstains on a cream-colored sofa, nor silence the nightmares of those who survived. For Samantha's children, the true legacy is not the violence of that night, but the example of their mother's strength. And for society, her death became a warning carved in pain. Even in the homes of those sworn to protect us, the most dangerous enemy can live within. On that fatal night, when Samantha's life was cut short in despair, it was her 14-year-old son, Mark, who rose in courage. In the midst of terror, he crawled beneath the garage door, dialed 911, and saved his younger siblings. His bravery reflected the very instinct his mother had lived by, protecting others even in the darkest hour. Yet no sentence, no policy change can bring Samantha back. No reform can erase the bloodstains from the sofa or the haunting memories from her children's minds. In this case, justice is not measured in trials or verdicts. It lies in whether society can finally open its eyes to the silent epidemic of domestic violence, even within the ranks of law enforcement. Her uncle, Ted Friley, said it best at her funeral. Please don't remember Samantha by the last few minutes of her life. Remember the 33 years of light she gave to the world. Those words carry a truth that lingers far beyond the courtroom. A life should never be defined by its ending, but by the love and strength that once filled it. If you ever see the signs control isolation, the quiet dimming of someone's spirit, do not ignore them. Speaking up could save a life. Remember Samantha, and let her story remind us all, darkness only prevails when the light stays silent. Ellen Greenberg, a young, vibrant teacher, was only a few months away from walking down the aisle in the wedding of her dreams. On that frosty winter morning, she was still chatting with friends about flowers and the white gown she couldn't wait to wear. The future seemed just a heartbeat away. But by nightfall, her cozy Philadelphia apartment had turned into a scene of horror. Ellen was found collapsed on the cold kitchen floor, her body pierced with more than 20 stab wounds, a knife lodged deep in her chest. The door had been locked from the inside, no signs of forced entry, no theft. And in a move that shocked many, police hastily ruled it a suicide. Yet questions screamed louder than the silence in that apartment. What about the older bruises on her body, the broken door latch that didn't quite match the story, and her fiancé, Sam Goldberg? Why did his statements shift each time they were examined? Could a woman who feared blood, who was planning her wedding day with joy, truly choose to end her life in such a brutal, unthinkable way? Or was this the stage for a performance designed to hide a darker truth? Behind that locked door that night, what really happened to Ellen Greenberg? And why, after more than a decade, do the answers remain buried in shadows? Ellen Ray Greenberg was born in June of 1983 in New York, the only child of Santa and George Greenberg. To them, she was a treasure. In high school, friends remembered her as energetic, athletic, always playing on the teams, yet still excelling in academics. Her bright smile and easygoing nature drew people to her effortlessly. After graduation, Ellen enrolled at Pennsylvania State University to study public relations, but soon she realized that wasn't her true calling. What she really longed for was to stand in front of a classroom, to teach and inspire children. She returned to school, earned her teaching degree, and eventually became a middle school teacher in Philadelphia. To her students, she was Miss Greenberg, the kind, dedicated teacher who pushed them to believe in themselves. Teaching was her pride, her passion. Around that time, love seemed to complete her picture of happiness. In 2009, Ellen met Samuel, or Sam Goldberg, at a party through mutual friends. He came from a wealthy, influential Philadelphia family. His parents owned a thriving business, and his uncle was one of the most powerful attorneys in the state. Their connection was instant. Within a few years, Sam proposed during the new year, slipping a sparkling diamond ring onto Ellen's finger. From then on, she threw herself into planning their spring wedding. She managed nearly everything: the invitations, the venue, the gown, the honeymoon details she spoke of, with joy to family and co-workers. Yet those around her began noticing something different. Ellen, once so independent, now hesitated at every decision. "I'll have to ask Sam first," she would say. Her parents sensed the change too. Their once confident daughter seemed nervous, unsettled. 3 weeks before the tragedy, Ellen told her mother she wanted to quit her job, leave Philadelphia, and move back home. Shocked, Santa reassured her, "You'll always have a home with us." But Ellen never raised the subject again. Friends and colleagues knew she struggled with anxiety, even seeing a psychologist. But never, not once, did she express the desire to end her life. She still loved teaching, still lit up when she talked about her students, still poured her energy into preparing for the wedding she called her dream. And that is what makes her death So incomprehensible. Could someone so full of promise, so close to a new chapter of life, truly decide to end it with more than 20 stab wounds? Or had Ellen been forced to mask a fear so deep she could not put it into words? The portrait of Ellen the teacher, with big dreams and a bright future, makes the darkness of what followed all the more jarring. Her happiness, it seems, may already have been stolen before she ever had the chance to wear her white dress. On January 26, 2011, Philadelphia lay frozen beneath heavy snow and blizzard winds. Schools dismissed early, and Ellen drove back to the apartment she shared with her fiancé, Sam Goldberg. In the warm kitchen, she began preparing dinner. A cutting board, spices, and half-prepared food still sat on the table, silent witnesses to an evening that would never be finished. Around 5 p.m., Sam left for the gym located inside their building complex. He later claimed he was gone less than an hour. When he returned, the apartment was unnervingly quiet. He knocked, called Ellen's name, sent messages, dialed her phone, but heard nothing, even though her phone was ringing from inside. Frustrated, Sam went downstairs to ask the security guard to unlock the door, but the guard refused, saying it was not within his authority. Sam returned upstairs, and in a moment of desperation, he rammed his shoulder into the door. The latch gave way on the first try. What he found inside was chilling. Ellen was slumped against the kitchen cabinet, her clothes soaked in blood. A kitchen knife protruded from her chest. Her body bore more than 20 stab wounds, 10 of them in her back. And yet, strangely, the apartment showed no signs of struggle, no overturned chairs, no broken objects, no defensive wounds on her hands. Sam dialed 911.
Help! I need a emergency now. I just walked to my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come. Help!
4601
Now. Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no! It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell.
So you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie!
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell
Ellie!
where the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, I think. But it's everywhere.
Okay,
it's everywhere.
I think she might have fallen. Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone.
Philadelphia Fire Department 842. What's the address? No.
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please hurry.
4601 Flat Rock?
Yes.
What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now, just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down. I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So I bring her.
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay, do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay, I can tell you what to do, okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her flat on her.
God.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, okay.
Willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off. Okay? Just kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
Okay, I'm trying not. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God. She stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell with a knife. Oh, no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her here now. I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is at her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator?
277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Is there what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
Was it her chest or what area?
It's in her chest. It looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there. Okay, just get.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
How old is she?
She's 27.
27. And there's no sign of life at all? Like,
No, please don't be. What?
Pinch her under her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
Ellie. She's not. Her arm, her hands are still warm. I don't know what that means, but there's blood everywhere.
I know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything.
Yeah, don't touch anything. Okay?
I'm not touching anything. I can't believe this, though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door, you said latched it shut?
No, I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched. Like it was, it wasn't like it was, it was like locked from the inside, and I'm yelling, so I'm yelling.
Was your house broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. There will be when you get here, because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 4601 Flat Rock, and this is a house, right?
It's an apartment, Flat Rock apartment.
Okay, that'll help.
Oh my God. All right, thank you. Bye.
But when the operator asked him to check Ellen's pulse, he hesitated. "Do I really have to?" he muttered. Then, after a pause, he suddenly added, "Oh, there's a knife in her chest." A detail he somehow hadn't noticed before. Police soon arrived. The door was indeed locked from the inside until Sam broke it down. Nothing had been stolen. Money, jewelry, valuables, all remained untouched. It was a perfect locked room mystery. And yet within hours, investigators suggested the unthinkable suicide. But could a woman stab herself more than 20 times, including deep wounds in her back, and still drive a blade through her own heart? Medical experts would later say such a scenario was virtually impossible. The dinner left unfinished on the counter, the young teacher planning her spring wedding, the brutal violence that ended it all, none of it matched the picture of a suicide. Instead, the scene whispered of something far darker, of a truth trapped behind that locked door, waiting to be uncovered. Instead of bringing clarity, the investigation into Ellen Greenberg's death sank into a maze of contradictions and mishandled evidence. On the very day of the tragedy, Sam Goldberg gave his statement at the police station. He claimed he had sought help from the building's security guard, and that the guard even accompanied him upstairs, witnessing him break the lock. Yet when questioned, the guard flatly denied ever leaving his post. Strangely, detectives dismissed this glaring inconsistency as insignificant. Another troubling detail emerged east. Sam had not called 911 immediately after failing to reach Ellen. Instead, nearly an hour passed while he phoned his parents and his influential uncle, one of the state's top attorneys, before finally contacting the police. When asked why, Sam explained he was too panicked to think clearly. But on the 911 call, his calm, steady answers suggested otherwise. Even the officer who took the call later noted that his panic sounded rehearsed. Forensic work was equally negligent. No luminol was used to detect wiped blood. The apartment's trash, a potential goldmine of evidence, was never searched. The initial autopsy overlooked injuries to Ellen's spine injuries, so severe that later independent experts confirmed she could not possibly have continued stabbing herself afterward. Meanwhile, a mysterious report appeared claiming her spinal cord was intact, but this document could never be officially verified. Sam's own story faltered under scrutiny. He said he had just returned from the gym, dressed in workout clothes. Yet the guard recalled him wearing winter boots and carrying no gym bag, no spare shoes. Surveillance cameras only captured Sam entering and leaving through one hallway, but no one verified whether he had truly worked out inside the gym or left the building by another exit during that missing stretch of time. Even more suspicious was his behavior the next day. Sam and his uncle returned to Ellen's apartment and removed 2 laptops, a phone, and a tablet. When investigators later accessed these devices, they found internet searches about suicide. But crucial questions remained unanswered. Who made those searches and when, despite mounting inconsistencies? A broken latch that didn't match the story, the contradictory testimony of the guard, a delayed call to police, and the removal of Ellen's electronics. Investigators clung to their original conclusion: suicide. The case was never opened as a homicide. To outsiders, the explanation seemed absurdly simple for such a violent, complex scene. But to Ellen's family, and to those who studied the evidence, it revealed something far more disturbing: the justice system, willing to turn its back on obvious questions. The contradictions surrounding Sam, the sloppy handling of evidence, the vanishing forensic reports, none of it erased the truth. Instead, it deepened the shadow over Ellen's final hours, and it set the stage for a bitter struggle between a grieving family and a system that seemed determined to keep the truth buried. For Samantha and George Greenberg, the grief of losing their only daughter was unbearable. But what haunted them even more was the way the system rushed to close the file, stamping suicide onto Ellen's death with unsettling ease. They knew their child. Ellen feared blood, had a low tolerance for pain, and was counting down the days to her wedding. Ellen would never do this to herself, Samantha insisted. She simply wouldn't choose that way to leave this world. In the early days, the Greenbergs were given nothing but shallow explanations. No criminal charges, no thorough answers, just silence. Refusing to accept it, they launched their own search for truth. With savings and sheer determination, they hired independent experts. One private investigator even offered his services free of charge, admitting that the case haunted him too. Soon, shocking discoveries came to light. Photos of the scene revealed dried blood running from Ellen's nose to her ear, impossible in the position her body was found. The only explanation: her body had been moved. On the kitchen floor, faint smears suggested drag marks. All of this police had ignored. Independent medical examiners stepped forward as well. They pointed out that some of the stab wounds in Ellen's back were severe enough to immobilize her almost instantly. They emphasized the glaring omissions of the initial autopsy: no proper spinal examination, no luminol testing for cleaned blood. Crucial evidence was lost forever. By 2018, the Greenbergs hoped for reconsideration. Instead, the medical examiner officially declared that all 20 stab wounds were self-inflicted. Experts across the country called the conclusion a disgrace to forensic science, yet the system remained unfazed. The family refused to surrender. They hired new attorneys and in 2019 filed a lawsuit against the coroner's office and investigators, accusing them of negligence and misconduct. Their case included overlooked documents, witness statements, and medical findings. But when the global pandemic struck, hearings were postponed indefinitely, another cruel delay in their search for justice. Meanwhile, Sam Goldberg distanced himself completely. At first, he maintained limited contact with Ellen's parents. But soon, he cut ties entirely. Within 1 year of Ellen's death, he remarried, moved to another state, and buried her memory in silence. For Samantha and George, every day remained a battle. They created a social media page, posting official documents, new details and theories, determined to keep their daughter's story alive. In their words, "Our daughter did not take her own life. Someone murdered Ellen, and we will never stop fighting for the truth." More than a decade later, the Greenbergs are still fighting against a legal system that looked away, against the influence of a powerful family, and against the crushing exhaustion of grief. For them, justice is not about revenge. It is about truth. And truth is the only peace they can ever hope to give Ellen. More than 10 years have passed since that fateful night, and the name Ellen Greenberg still lingers like an open wound. Sam Goldberg, the fiancé, who once promised her forever, quickly remarried within 1 year, moved to another state, and built a new family. He never again cooperated with investigators, never joined the fight for answers. His silence speaks louder than any testimony. For Santa and George Greenberg, the story could not end there. They never sought vengeance. What they demanded was simple recognition of the truth, so that their daughter would not be remembered as someone who ended her own life in despair. Time and again they stood before cameras, their voices heavy with grief. Santa would say, "Ellen did not take her own life. She was murdered." And until our final breath, we will not stop searching for the truth. This case is not only about the brutal death of a young woman. It is about the collapse of a system that should have protected her, but instead closed its eyes. It forces us to ask painful questions. How did Ellen really die? Who must be held accountable? And does justice truly belong to everyone, or only to those with wealth and influence? Ellen's story is a mirror reflecting the darkest corners of society, where truth can be twisted, where justice can be silenced. And now I turn to you. Do you believe justice for Ellen Greenberg can still be achieved? Share your thoughts below. Because only when many voices rise together does truth have a chance to be heard. Hello everyone, welcome back to Whodunit, the channel that dives deep into the most chilling true crime case. Today we're uncovering the heartbreaking and mysterious story of a young, beautiful woman named Taylor Pomaski. So let's explore this case together. On April 26, 2021, in Harris County, Texas, Stephen Pomaski sat quietly by the phone. Mondays were usually the day his daughter, 29-year-old Taylor Pomaski, would call, just to ask one simple question: "Dad, how are you?" But that day, the line stayed silent. No text, no call, only an absence heavy enough to chill the air. Taylor, a young woman, full of warmth, carrying her family with both strength and tenderness, suddenly vanished. As the eldest daughter, she wasn't just a sister. She was a protector, a confidant, the glue that kept everyone together. And she was inseparable from her dogs. To Taylor, leaving them behind would have been like abandoning her own heart. Just one day earlier, she had been seen at a house party in Spring with friends and her boyfriend Kevin Ware Jr., a former NFL player, once cheered on in stadiums. Amid the laughter, the drinks, and the haze of smoke, a bitter argument erupted. Kevin later claimed that Taylor stormed out, climbed into a strange car filled with men, and disappeared. But his story was riddled with holes. Her mother, Leslie, insisted my daughter would never leave without her dogs. That single detail cracked the surface of his version, turning concern into suspicion. Where had Taylor gone on that fateful night? Why did the man who claimed to love her sound so detached? And if the truth was hidden behind his cold, practiced words, what would be the cost when it finally came to light on April 26, 2021? As the sun dipped behind the suburban rooftops of Spring, Texas, the Pomaski family slipped into a nightmare no one could have foreseen. Taylor, the gentle, warm-hearted daughter who had never left her parents, worried for more than a day, had suddenly disappeared. Stephen called. Leslie, Taylor's mother, called as well. But every signal dissolved into silence. The phone was off. No messages. No trace. For some families, this might have been dismissed as a young woman needing space. But for Taylor, who lived tethered to her family and her beloved dogs, the silence was an alarm bell that couldn't be ignored. Leslie decided to reach out to Kevin Ware Jr., the man Taylor was living with. Kevin's voice over the line was steady, almost rehearsed, but disturbingly detached. He said he hadn't seen Taylor since April 25th. They had argued at a house party, and she walked out climbing into a car filled with men before vanishing into the night. On the surface, it sounded plausible. A couple fights, a woman storms off. But Leslie knew one thing made that story impossible. Taylor would never abandon her dogs. Not in sorrow, not in anger. For Taylor, they were family. To leave them behind was unthinkable. At first, investigators leaned toward the simplest explanation. At 29, Taylor was an adult fully capable of walking away if she chose to. But Leslie's conviction planted doubt in their minds. And then when detectives sifted through Taylor's emails, another name emerged: Eric Zuliger. Only hours before she disappeared, Taylor had sent Eric a desperate message begging to see him. Eric wasn't just anyone. He was her ex-boyfriend of 6 years. Suddenly, Kevin's story of Taylor leaving in a car with men no longer seemed far-fetched. Detectives turned their focus on Eric. But the moment Eric was contacted, suspicion began to unravel. He didn't avoid the police. He came straight to the station, handing over the very email Taylor had sent, along with texts and screenshots. Calmly, he explained their history. They had parted ways, yes, but on good terms, and they remained close friends. More importantly, Eric revealed something that cut through the air like glass. Taylor had confided in him about Kevin. She told him about Kevin's reckless lifestyle, his substance abuse, his violent temper, and the suspension from his NFL career. She said she was preparing to leave him for good. Eric wasn't spinning a jealous tale. He had proof. Taylor's family backed him up. They too had read her messages, seen the fear between the lines, and recognized that she was planning to end things with Kevin once and for all. Detectives circled back to Kevin's account. They interviewed the party guests one by one, and that's when the first real crack split open. Several guests swore that Taylor had never walked out of the house. After the shouting match with Kevin, she went upstairs pale and unsteady. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. No car, no strange men, just silence. What made it worse was the way most guests spoke, guarded, evasive, as if there was a dangerous truth none of them dared to tell. From that moment forward, investigators stopped calling it a disappearance. They began using a darker word: homicide. And the man at the center of it all was once again the same Kevin Ware Jr. As the case shifted from a disappearance to a suspected homicide, the air around the Pomaski family grew heavier. They clung to hope that Taylor was still alive somewhere, maybe in need of time and healing. But Leslie's instincts, the kind only a mother carries, screamed that something far darker had happened. Early in the investigation, the Harris County Sheriff's Office enlisted Texas EquiSearch, a nonprofit search and rescue team founded by Tim Miller. Volunteers combed through fields, creeks, ditches, and wooded lots. They stretched across 100 miles, walking shoulder to shoulder, scanning every inch of land. But what they found was nothing, just silence. And the more they searched, the more suffocating that silence became. Then, a chilling detail surfaced. A woman who had once been romantically involved with Kevin stepped forward. She claimed that shortly after Taylor vanished, Kevin had given her something unexpected: Taylor's dogs. This revelation struck investigators like a lightning bolt. Kevin had told Leslie that Taylor stormed off with her animals. Yet here they were, placed in the arms of another woman. It wasn't just a contradiction. It was a fracture in his carefully constructed facade. And it hinted at something even deeper: control, manipulation, an attempt to erase Taylor's presence piece by piece. In June 2021, the case twisted again. Kevin was arrested not for Taylor's disappearance, but for drugs and illegal firearms. Police caught him speeding at 115 miles an hour with cocaine, meth, and weapons in his vehicle. Initially released on bond, he violated his terms and soon found himself locked up again. Ironically, it was behind bars that Kevin's world began to crumble. The salons surrounding him fractured. People who had once kept quiet started talking acquaintances, partygoers, even old friends. They painted a disturbing picture of the night Taylor was last seen. Witnesses described Kevin as intoxicated, fueled not only by alcohol, but also by substances that amplified his rage. In the middle of the party, he erupted into fury, screaming, throwing things and brandishing a gun. One witness recalled Kevin's chilling words, "If anyone has a problem with the way I handle my business, let me know. I'll put a round in your skull." Then came another lead one that carried the weight of horror. A man reported visiting a rural property owned by one of Kevin's acquaintances. There, in the charred earth of a recent fire, he saw a bone, large, unmistakably human. Inside the farmhouse, he noticed something even worse, a skull. Detectives moved quickly, securing warrants and connecting dots. When they pulled Kevin's phone records, the pieces snapped into place. Just hours after Taylor disappeared, Kevin had called the owner of that very farm. It was no longer speculation. The puzzle was aligning: the argument, the missing woman, the misplaced dogs, the threats at the party, and now a property where fire had burned too hot too long. The Pomaski family realized that hope was no longer enough. They weren't searching for Taylor alive. They were searching for the truth of how she had died. For investigators, one fact was undeniable. Kevin's web of lies was unraveling, and the trail of ash and silence was leading them straight to the heart of it. By December 2021, the investigation reached a turning point. Acting on multiple witness tips, Harris County investigators secured a warrant to search a rural farm in the northern part of the county. What they discovered there shook even the most seasoned detectives: scorched earth, fragments of charred bone, and the remains of a human skull. Everyone on scene knew instantly this was no ordinary fire pit. This was a graveyard of secrets, and it likely marked the brutal end of Taylor Pomaski's life. Forensic testing began, but justice takes time. The bones were badly damaged by both fire and exposure. Weeks turned into months as experts painstakingly extracted DNA. Finally, after more than 2 months of testing, the result confirmed what Taylor's family had feared most: the remains were hers. The confirmation shattered the thin thread of hope that had held the family together. For Leslie and Stephen, the nightmare was no longer about a missing daughter. It was about facing the reality of her violent death. And then a new voice surfaced: a woman who had spent just one night with Kevin. In her sworn statement, she revealed how, in a haze of drugs and euphoria, Kevin had let slip a confession. He told her that after the argument at the party, he had followed Taylor upstairs into the bathroom. Rage consumed him. He shoved her, beat her, and strangled her until she was gone. When the guests left, he wrapped her body, loaded it into his vehicle, drove to the farm, and set it ablaze. This was not a confession forced in an interrogation room. It was the kind of chilling slip that comes when arrogance meets intoxication, when a man believes his secrets are safe in the dark. But in that moment of weakness, Kevin betrayed himself. The psychology of Kevin Ware Jr. was on full display. Once a celebrated NFL athlete, he embodied the narcissistic fall from fame to infamy, from applause to addiction. He craved control, dominance, and the illusion that he could outwit everyone around him. But every lie, every manipulation, and every attempt to erase Taylor only tied the noose tighter around his own neck. Phone records sealed the connection. Hours after Taylor was last seen alive, Kevin contacted the very man who owned the farm where her remains were discovered. The timeline was undeniable. Yet when confronted again, Kevin's demeanor remained dismissive. He denied every accusation. He claimed the woman fabricated her story, that the witnesses were unreliable, that he was being targeted because of his past. It was the same mask he had worn from the beginning, arrogance dressed up as indifference. But detectives knew his mask was slipping. They had the physical remains, the witnesses, the phone records, and now a chilling confession whispered in the wrong ear. The only thing left was to push Kevin into a corner. He could no longer escape. The ashes had spoken, and in their silence, they told a story of rage, betrayal, and a fire meant to erase the truth, but instead one that illuminated it for all to see. By April 2022, when DNA testing confirmed that the charred bones belonged to Taylor Pomaski, the case could no longer be framed as speculation. What began as a missing persons report had become an undeniable homicide, a young woman's life stolen and her body reduced to ashes in a desperate attempt to hide the truth. Detectives had assembled a chain of evidence, witness accounts of the violent party, Kevin handing Taylor's dogs to another woman, phone records linking him to the farm, and the chilling late-night confession he spilled to a stranger. But evidence alone doesn't deliver justice. It must be sharpened into a weapon inside the courtroom. That task fell to prosecutor Samantha Keithley. Samantha was no stranger to men like Kevin Ware Jr. She had stood across from powerful, arrogant defendants before men who believed their fame, their money, or their reputation could bend the law. She understood Kevin's psychology, a former NFL tight end, once adored by crowds accustomed to victories, allergic to losing. To break him, she wouldn't appeal to sympathy. She would speak his language, the language of competition. When Samantha finally sat across from Kevin, she didn't waste words. She looked him straight in the eyes and said, "We're going to play a game. You have 30 minutes. Plead guilty and serve 30 years, or roll the dice in court and spend the rest of your life behind bars." Then she walked out, leaving Kevin alone in Williamsey. For 20 minutes, the man who once threatened party guests with a gun, who believed he could erase a woman with fire, sat in Whodunit calculation. He consulted with his lawyer, weighed his pride against reality, and finally crumbled. For the first time since Taylor vanished, he admitted the truth. In Harris County Court, Kevin Ware Jr. pleaded guilty to murder and to tampering with evidence. The sentence to 30 years in prison, a number that symbolized not only his downfall, but also the culmination of nearly a year of relentless pursuit by investigators, advocates, and Taylor's family. For the legal system, it was a victory. For the Pomaski family, it was a hollow one. Leslie clutched Taylor's graduation photo, her voice breaking. "Maybe justice has been served, but our pain will never end." Stephen, who had once waited for his daughter's Monday call, now knew the phone would remain silent forever. The public, too, was shaken. How could a man, once celebrated in the NFL, cheered on fields, adored in headlines, descend into drugs, violence, and ultimately murder? Kevin's story became a grim reminder of the corrosive power of arrogance, addiction, and unchecked rage. Justice was delivered, but the verdict left behind a haunting question. Does 30 years in prison truly balance the scales for a life so brutally stolen? Or is the real sentence carried by those who must go on, living with the void Taylor left behind? When the 30-year sentence was finally handed down in a Harris County courtroom, silence settled over the room like a heavy fog. Kevin Ware Jr., once a fairy cheered on football fields, was now condemned as a murderer. But for the Pomaski family, the gavel's echo did not bring closure. It only marked another chapter of grief. Leslie Taylor's mother wept as she spoke. "Maybe he's been sentenced. But for us, the pain will last forever." It wasn't just the loss of a daughter. It was the permanent scar left on a family's heart. Stephen, the father who once waited every Monday for his daughter's call, knew that the silence on the other end of the line would remain eternal. The symbol of fire, The very thing Kevin believed would erase the evidence became the very element that betrayed him. Flames cannot consume justice. Lies cannot bury the truth. In the end, what he thought would protect him only illuminated the horror of his crime. But a deeper question lingers. What truly killed Taylor Pomaski? Was it Kevin's hands that ended her life? Or was it the toxic cycle of manipulation, violence, and silence that allowed the abuse to grow unchecked? Sometimes the real crime isn't only the fatal blow. It is the quiet complicity of those who choose not to see. Taylor's story is more than a tragedy. It is a warning, a reminder to listen for the subtle signs of toxic love, to trust intuition, and to never let silence shield the truth. Her name deserves to be remembered, not just as a victim, but as a voice that demands change. If Taylor's story moved you, share it. Let her memory live on by sparking conversations that matter. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime documentaries where we uncover not just the crimes, but the truths they leave behind. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Whodunit, where we always bring you the most chilling, true crime cases. Today we will once again explore the heartbreaking and mysterious story of a beautiful young 18-year-old girl from Abington, Pennsylvania. So let's dive into this story together. Morgan McAffrey, 18 years old, was a vibrant young woman in Abington, Pennsylvania. She had just graduated from high school and was preparing to enter dental school, her future wide open, shining as brightly as her smile in that graduation photo. To her friends, Morgan was a beacon of light, the hope of her adoptive mother, Kathleen, who had brought her home from Guatemala with boundless love. But only 1 month after deciding to end her relationship, Morgan's life came to a tragic close at the Meadowbrook train station. What should have been just an ordinary morning became the stage of brutality: 45 stab wounds, a love story twisted into a nightmare with no escape. What unsettled everyone even more was this Gilbert Newton III. The boy, once described as kind, polite, even well-mannered, had become the very person who destroyed the girl he once swore to love. A chilling question echoed through the courtroom. What transforms an ordinary young man into such a ruthless killer? This was not simply a murder. It was a devastating chronicle of toxic love, blind devotion, and the darkness buried deep in the human psyche, a darkness that consumed both the victim and the perpetrator. At 18, Morgan McAffrey embodied a new beginning. Adopted from Guatemala and raised in the loving care of her mother, Kathleen, she carried resilience and a dream of becoming a dentist. At Nazareth Academy High School, she was well loved by her friends, the pride of her family, and ready to step into a bright future. Then came Gilbert Newton III. To Morgan, he seemed like the perfect boyfriend, attentive, always full of surprises, sending morning texts that said, "Good morning, beautiful," and making her feel cherished. Their happiness grew even more when both families approved of the relationship. Shared meals, sports games where Morgan cheered him on, and endless moments together painted the picture of an idyllic young romance. But darkness often begins quietly. Gilbert grew irritated whenever Morgan was slow to respond to his texts. He bristled when she spent time with friends. At family gatherings, he withdrew, glued to his phone, leaving Morgan to cover his distance with excuses. She told herself, "He's just tired. He just wants time alone with me." Yet each small sign pointed toward something far more sinister: control. Violence never erupts overnight. It creeps in with threats whispered like warnings, then grows into physical outbursts. A shove, a slap, even a bite, all delivered under the twisted claim of love. Morgan was frightened, but deep inside, She clung to the belief that she could fix him, that he was just struggling. Instead of leaving, she chose forgiveness, telling herself she could carry his painful for him. From a criminological lens, this was the familiar cycle of abuse, the honeymoon phase of affection, followed by eruptions of anger, then promises of remorse, pulling the victim back in. For Morgan, every tender moment reignited her hope that love could mend the cracks. But each cycle only tightened the trap. Friends and family saw the danger clearly. They urged her to leave, warning that Gilbert's behavior was far from normal. Yet Morgan resisted. She didn't want to be the one to abandon someone she loved. She didn't want to break his heart even as he broke hers. She shouldered the suffering, convincing herself that strength meant endurance. What began as a sweet teenage love story had transformed into an invisible cage built of fear, pity, and the false hope that love alone could change a person's true nature. It was the tragic beginning of a chain of events that would soon lead to the unimaginable. In the summer of 2020, Morgan reached her breaking point. After months of enduring jealousy, threats, and physical violence, she made the brave decision to end her relationship with Gilbert Whodunit III. For an 18-year-old, it was not just the end of a romance, it was an act of courage, an attempt to free herself from the toxic sprawl that had consumed her. But that choice set the stage for a far more tragic outcome. Gilbert could not accept it. He spiraled into obsession, bombarding Morgan with calls and messages that swung wildly between desperate pleas and vicious insults. At times, his words grew chillingly violent. In one message he wrote, "I just want to stab you in the neck over and over again." That was not a fleeting outburst. It was a window into a disturbed mind where control and violence had become indistinguishable from love. Morgan tried to protect herself. She blocked his number, shut him out on social media, and cut every line of contact. But her silence only fueled his rage. From a criminal psychology perspective, Gilbert's mindset reflected the classic syndrome: if I can't have you, no one else will. It was the obsessive possessiveness that so often lies at the heart of intimate partner homicides. The night before the murder, Gilbert scrolled through social media and saw a photo of Morgan with another young man. That image was the trigger. To him, it was proof of betrayal, real or imagined, that shattered whatever self-control he had left. Fueled by jealousy and humiliation, he went to the kitchen, took 2 knives from his mother's home, and tucked them away. Out loud, he told himself a twisted story. He would hurt himself in front of Morgan, so she would come back. But in truth, the weapons revealed his darker intent. On the surface, it was the fantasy of a heartbroken boy. Beneath it was the preparation of a killer. The knives, the fixation, the escalating threats, all signs that the violence had moved from imagination to inevitability. Meanwhile, Morgan still clung to a fragile hope. She agreed to meet Gilbert in a public place, thinking that a final conversation might bring closure. She believed that daylight and the presence of others would shield her from danger. It was the decision of a young woman who had not yet fully grasped the depths of his unraveling might. By choosing the Meadowbrook train station as the meeting spot, Morgan thought she was choosing safety. Instead, she was stepping directly into the trap of a man who had already armed himself and surrendered to obsession. The shadow of that obsession now stretched across every part of her life. Morgan, with all her courage, had taken the step to leave. But against someone who refused to let go, every effort at freedom only deepened the darkness that was closing in. July 27, 2020. At first glance, it was just another ordinary morning in Abington, Pennsylvania. But for Morgan McAffrey, it would be her last. She had agreed to meet Gilbert Whodunit III at the Meadowbrook train station, believing that a public place would keep her safe. In her mind, it was a final conversation, a way to put an end to the turmoil. Around 7:30 a.m., Morgan drove to the station. She left her car engine running the entire 45 minutes. They sat and talked, an unspoken sign that she was ready to leave at any moment. Gilbert begged for reconciliation, but when Morgan revealed she was seeing someone new, the mask of desperation fell away, replaced by venom. He spat insults, words designed to humiliate and wound. In a moment of raw defiance, Morgan slapped him and spat back. For a heartbeat, it might have seemed like she had taken control of the situation. But then Gilbert reached into his pocket. The knife gleamed as he pulled it out, and in an instant, everything shattered. The attack was frenzied, merciless. Not once, not 10 times, but 45 separate stab wounds delivered with the force of a rage obsession and the collapse of reason. Morgan fought, but the violence was overwhelming. Within minutes, her life was extinguished in the very car where she thought she'd find closure. A passerby, horrified, witnessed the assault and dialed 911. But when paramedics arrived, there was nothing left to save. Morgan lay lifeless, her body marked by the brutality of a boy she once loved. Gilbert fled in his Jeep, speeding away from the scene. Yet only hours later, he confessed in chillingly simple words. In a text to his mother, he wrote, "I killed Morgan about an hour ago." It was not the message of a man overcome by a sudden impulse. It was the admission of someone who had carried out what his words had foreshadowed for weeks. For investigators, the contradictions were telling. Gilbert claimed he had brought the knives to harm himself, to force Morgan to stop him, to prove she still cared. But the premeditation was undeniable. He had armed himself before ever stepping into that car. He had envisioned violence long before the first blow. That morning, the Meadowbrook train station, usually a place of travel and routine, became a stage of horror, a symbol of how obsession can twist love into destruction. And from that blood-stained ground, a new journey began, one of investigation, evidence, and ultimately, the pursuit of justice. 1 year after the brutal morning at Meadowbrook Station, a Pennsylvania courtroom became the arena where truth and justice would collide. Gilbert Newton III no longer stood as the polite young man his family once praised. He stood as a convicted killer, facing the weight of the law. His defense attorney, Charles Peruto, painted him as a foolish kid, immature, but not evil. He pleaded with the jury to reduce the charge from first-degree murder to third-degree, arguing that Gilbert acted in a storm of emotion rather than with premeditation. "He's just a kid who broke down under heartbreak," Peruto insisted. But Assistant District Attorney Kathleen McLaughlin countered with evidence that stripped away any illusion of innocence. She presented a trail of text messages Gilbert had sent in the weeks before Morgan's death. One read chillingly, "I'm going to stab you 57 times. The reality, Morgan was stabbed 40 times. These were not careless words, they were blueprints for violence. On the stand, Gilbert admitted to writing the texts, but brushed them aside. "When I'm angry, I say things I don't mean." Yet his dismissiveness only deepened the portrait of a young man who wielded threats as weapons and, when words failed, turned them into action. The most haunting moment of the trial came not from the lawyers, but from a grieving mother. Kathleen McAffrey faced Gilbert directly. Her voice trembled as she began to count. 1, 2, 3. She continued until she reached 45. The number of stab wounds her daughter had endured before breaking down in tears. Then she looked him in the eyes and said, "You are a monster. You didn't just stab her. You destroyed my family." The courtroom fell into silence. Gilbert lowered his head, expression blank, avoiding the gaze of the mother whose life he had shattered. His emptiness in that moment was as chilling as the crime itself. After 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence was life in prison, without the possibility of parole. The gavel struck, sealing Gilbert's fate. But for Morgan's family, no sentence could ever restore what was taken. Justice had been served, yet grief remained raw and permanent. This trial was not only about punishing a killer. It was a stark reminder of what happens when love mutates into obsession, when threats are dismissed as just words, and when the warning signs of abuse go unheeded. The courtroom provided closure, but the echoes of Morgan's story would continue to reverberate far beyond its walls. The life sentence closed Gilbert Newton III's fate, but for those left behind, justice could never erase the wound. Kathleen McAffrey, the mother who had dedicated her life to giving Morgan a brighter future, now wakes each day to a silence carved by loss. In court, her words still echo, "This isn't just a life sentence for him. This is a life sentence for me and my family." Out of tragedy, Morgan's friends and loved ones created Morgan's Light, a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising awareness about teen dating violence. Each workshop, each story shared stands as a warning. Love should never mean control, never mean violence, never mean possession. It is the legacy Morgan left behind, the light born out of darkness. Yet the haunting question lingers: was justice truly served when a mother still counts the stab wounds in her mind each night? When a family must carry the weight of absence forever? 45 knife wounds did not just kill a young woman, they carved an invisible sentence into everyone who loved her. Morgan's story is more than a case file. It is a call to vigilance, to recognize the warning signs, to walk away from relationships where love is twisted into fear, and to speak out before it is too late. If Morgan's story touched your heart, share it. Speak it aloud. Let her light guide others to safety, because sometimes silence can kill.